Welcome. My name is Julian Cross, and this is my confession. It was supposed to be just another Saturday. Rain swept the streets clean of people, and the glass towers downtown reflected my mistakes back at me. I parked without thinking, silenced the phone that wouldn't stop buzzing, and walked until I found shelter inside a small bookstore wedged between a coffee shop and a pawn shop. I hadn't stepped into a place like that in years. Billionaires buy libraries, not paperbacks. But that day, I just wanted quiet. The bell above the door gave a soft, almost embarrassed ring. Inside, the air smelled of dust and cinnamon. Somewhere behind the counter, a heater clicked inside. I was halfway to the back when I heard a small, steady voice reading aloud to someone who didn't answer. It came from the children's section. A little girl, maybe 6, sat cross-legged on the carpet, a stack of picture books beside her, and a stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. She was reading Goodnight Moon, though the book was upside down. Her voice trembled on the longer words, but she refused to give up. When she noticed me, she blinked once and said, serious as a judge, "You can sit there if you want. I'm practicing for my mom. She's sick." Something in the way she said it, not scared, just sure, hit me in the chest. I sat down on the bench across from her without meaning to. "What's your name?" I asked. "Lily." She brushed a strand of hair from her eyes. "Mom says reading helps her feel better, but sometimes she's too tired. So I read to her now. She likes when I do the voices." She looked down at the page, chewing her lip. "Can you teach me to read faster? I want to finish a whole book before she falls asleep next time." That one sentence landed harder than anything I'd heard in years. I smiled before I could stop myself. "I bet she does." She studied me carefully, the way kids do when they're solving a puzzle. "You look like someone who forgot how to smile for real." The honesty hit like a dart. I was still searching for a reply when another voice drifted from the next aisle. "Lily, honey, stay where I can see you." And then she appeared. Emma. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd imagined her. A ghost from a life I'd buried under money and headlines. But ghosts don't carry tote bags full of library books or cough into their sleeve like they're trying to hide it. 6 years. That's how long it had been since she'd stood in my doorway, tears on her face, telling me she couldn't compete with my ambition. I'd let her go, believing success could fill the space she'd left. It never did. Her eyes met mine now, and time folded in on itself. She froze mid-step, color draining from her cheeks. "Daniel?" Hearing my name in her voice felt like being punched with memory. I stood, every apology I'd never said caught in my throat. "I didn't know you still lived here," I managed. "I don't," she said quickly. "We moved back last month. For treatment." Her tone cracked on that last word. She tried to smile, but it slipped. Lily looked between us, sensing tension she couldn't name. "Mom, he helped me read. He listens good." Emma's hand trembled as she touched her daughter's shoulder. "That's nice of him," she said softly, eyes still locked on mine. I wanted to ask 100 questions. About her, about the child, about what kind of sickness required treatment, but my tongue felt heavy. She shifted the tote bag higher on her shoulder. "We should go, Lily. Say thank you." "Thank you, mister," the girl said, clutching her rabbit. "You're welcome," I whispered, though they were already walking away. The bell rang again as the door closed behind them. I stood there in the silence that followed, the smell of paper and rain thick in the air, and realized my hands were shaking. 6 years ago, I'd walked out of her life. Today, fate had walked her, and her little girl, straight back into mine. The sound of that bell followed me home. It echoed through the hallways of my apartment, faint and persistent, like a memory that refused to fade. I tried to drown it out with work, with news tickers and glowing screens, but it just kept ringing somewhere behind my thoughts. A week passed before I found the bookmark. It was a thin card from the bookstore, bin at the corner, with a phone number scrawled in uneven, childish handwriting. For my mom's next story. That one line ended every excuse I'd made to myself. The next morning, I drove back to the bookstore. The woman behind the counter recognized me, the way people recognize faces that come printed on magazine covers. "They come in a lot," she said. "The little girl and her mother. Sweet kid. Her mom's sick. They're at St. Mary's Oncology." By noon, I was standing in front of the hospital, the kind of building you drive past for years without ever seeing. My company's charity branch had promised to renovate it once. I'd forgotten. The doors opened with a sigh that sounded tired. The air smelled of bleach and fear. Private clinics are all glass and orchids. This place was chipped paint, cracked floors, and chairs that remembered every weight that ever sat in them. When I asked for Emma, the nurse behind the counter frowned. "Room 412, she said. "She's in treatment. You can wait if you're family." Family. The word caught in my throat. "I'll wait." I sat under the buzz of fluorescent lights and tried to read the stock alerts on my phone, but the numbers looked foreign, meaningless. My reflection in the black screen looked like someone I didn't remember becoming. Then the door at the end of the hallway opened, and I knew her walk before my heart caught up. She moved slowly, wrapped in a thin sweater despite the heat. The scarf around her head told me what the nurse hadn't. Her eyes met mine, startled and tired. "Daniel? What are you doing here?" "I came to see how you're doing," I said. "How Lily's doing. You shouldn't have come." I couldn't just walk away again. Something flickered across her face, pain, anger, maybe something worse. Then she sighed. "You never were good at letting go." "No," I admitted. "Especially the things I ruined." The machines behind her beeped in slow rhythm, counting everything I'd failed to fix. "Lily's in the playroom," she said finally. "She'll be happy to see you. She keeps talking about the man who listened." She led me through narrow corridors lined with children's drawings, crayon rainbows, crooked suns, angels with uneven wings. I could almost hear her voice in each one, the way she'd once told me hope was a habit, not a feeling. Lily sat on the floor surrounded by crayons. When she saw me, she lit up. "You came back?" "I told you I would," I said, crouching beside her. "You promised to teach me how to read faster, remember?" She giggled. "Mom says you're her old friend. You should visit more. She gets sad when she thinks I don't notice." Emma stood in the doorway, her arms folded, her eyes trying to hide something I wasn't meant to see. "Maybe I will," I said. Lily grinned, satisfied. "Then you can help me finish my book." We read slow when Mom's tired. The nurse appeared to call Emma back for her session. Lily's hand shot toward mine. "You'll stay till she's done?" "Yes," I said. "I'll be right here." They walked away, hand in hand, disappearing into the light at the end of the hallway. I sat by the window in the waiting room, watching the rain blur the glass until the city outside looked like a watercolor painting someone had left out too long. When the nurse passed again, she said, "She's lucky to have someone." I didn't know who she meant, Emma, Lily, or me. Maybe all of us. Before I left, I stopped by the wall of drawings. One of them caught my eye, 3 stick figures standing beneath a crooked sun. A woman, a man, and a girl with yellow hair. At the bottom, written in uneven letters, was a name, Lily. I took a picture of it without knowing why. Maybe because I already understood what I didn't want to admit. This wasn't chance. It was something I owed, coming back to collect. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. I stood under it for a while, listening to the soft patter against the pavement. Somewhere far away, a bell chimed, faint and familiar, and I knew I'd be back. The days blurred together after that. I told myself I was just visiting out of kindness, but the truth was simpler and more dangerous. I wanted to be there. Every time Lily's face lit up when I stepped into that gray hallway, something inside me softened, something I hadn't realized had turned to stone. We fell into a rhythm. She'd sit cross-legged on the hospital bed, a picture book balanced on her knees, and I'd read beside her until Emma came back from treatment. Sometimes Lily fell asleep mid-story, her hand still on the page as if afraid the words might vanish while she slept. The doctors passed with polite nods, pretending not to stare. They'd seen my kind before, the man who arrives too late, who tries to buy redemption in small daily doses. One evening I brought dinner that didn't come on a plastic tray. Real food. Real plates. Emma smiled faintly when I laid it out. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "I wanted to," I told her. "You shouldn't have to eat what they call chicken." She laughed softly, the sound pulling years of silence out of the air. It was the same laugh I remembered from the nights before everything cracked, the one that made any room feel like home. Then Lily looked up from her coloring book and said, "Mom, can Daniel come home with us when you get better?" Emma's smile faltered. "Sweetheart, Daniel has his own home." "I know," Lily said cheerfully. "But ours is small, and he reads fast. He could help me finish the hard words." I met Emma's eyes, but she wouldn't meet mine. There was too much truth waiting there. When Lily fell asleep, I followed Emma into the hallway. The faint hum of machines filled the space between us. "She doesn't stop talking about you," Emma said quietly. "You've made her week brighter." "She's made my life make sense again," I said. "Emma, how bad is it?" She hesitated, then exhaled slowly. "It's spreading. They're starting another round, but the doctors don't make promises anymore." I felt the floor tilt. For years I'd lived in a world where money solved everything. Standing there, I understood what real helplessness felt like. "You're not alone," I said. Her eyes lifted, sharp and sad. "Don't do this out of guilt." "Out of what, then?" She studied me for a moment. "You left once, Daniel. You don't get to save me now just to make it right." Her words were a blade, but behind them, I heard something else, fear, not for herself but for Lily. "Tell me about her," I said. Emma frowned. "What do you mean? How old is she?" "She turned 6 in April." 6. The year I left. The month she stopped answering my calls. I did the math before I could stop myself. "Why didn't you tell me?" She froze, her face draining of color. "Daniel, she's mine, isn't she?" Her voice broke. "Please, not here. You had my child, and you never." "I tried," she snapped, tears slipping through her control. "I called. You were halfway across the world talking about mergers and towers. You didn't answer. I thought she'd be safer without you." "Safer?" "You were turning into someone I didn't recognize. Hard. Cold. I didn't want her growing up watching that. She needed something gentler." Her honesty hit harder than her anger. Because she was right. I had turned everything into a transaction, even love. "Does she know?" I asked quietly. Emma shook her head. "No. Please don't tell her. Let her have peace. You can be her friend, but not," her voice broke, "not what you were to me." We stood in silence. Through the glass, I could see Lily asleep, her rabbit clutched to her chest, her lips moving faintly as if she were still reading in her dreams. "Promise me," Emma whispered. "Promise you won't tell her." Every part of me rebelled against it, but I said, "I promise." She nodded, eyes wet. "Thank you." The words should have felt like grace. Instead, they felt like exile. Because truth never dies quietly, it waits, breathing beneath the surface, patient as guilt. That night, I sat in my car outside the hospital, watching the lights flicker in the windows. My reflection stared back from the windshield, and I barely recognized the man looking at me. Not the billionaire from magazine covers, not the negotiator who never lost a deal, just a stranger holding a secret shaped like a child. And for the first time in 6 years, I wanted something I couldn't buy, A second chance before time ran out. Money had always been my language. It bought silence, time, and sometimes even forgiveness. So when I learned that Emma's cancer had spread, I did what I knew best. I started spending. I called every specialist whose number I had, offered donations that doubled, tripled what they asked. I woke doctors in Zurich, promised entire wings to hospitals in Boston. If time was the enemy, I would buy it by the hour. Emma hated it. "They're not car parts, Daniel," she said one afternoon, her fingers tied around a paper cup of hospital coffee. "You can't buy a cure the way you buy a building." "I can buy time," I said. "Time is where cures live." She looked at me, her eyes tired but steady. "You don't want time, you want control. You're trying to manage my illness like one of your companies." I didn't deny it. Control had built my world. It kept jets on schedule, markets obedient, and headlines clean. In the hospital, it was all I had left. Lily tugged at my sleeve before I could answer. "Guess what word we learned today?" "Oncology." "Oncology," I corrected, smiling. She grinned. "We're fast now." We were. We read through the beeps and sighs of machines, through nurse rounds and late evenings. She noticed everything, the way Emma smiled when I walked in, the way my hand lingered on the back of her chair, the quiet between us that carried too much history. "Do you have a daughter?" she asked one day, completely unaware of the knife she was twisting. I forced a breath. "No." "Then you can borrow me," she said simply. "Just while Mom sleeps." Emma turned her face toward the window, but I saw her jaw tremble. By the end of the week, I had a plan, private transport, a trial program, doctors waiting. The hospital board, which I practically owned, was ready to move mountains. I walked into her room like a man bringing good news. "No," she said before I'd even opened my mouth. "You don't even know what I'm proposing." "I know you," she said, her voice soft but steady. "And I know my body. I'm not wasting what I have left in airports and paperwork. I want to read to her, watch her draw, laugh when I still can. I want ordinary." Her voice cracked on the last word, and it broke something in me. Lily climbed into her lap and tucked herself into the curve of her mother's arm. The rabbit stared at me from the blanket like a silent accusation. I stayed anyway. I stayed through evening until the windows turned to mirrors, and the lights reflected the three of us together, something that looked almost like a family. Then the monitor alarm began to scream. It wasn't loud, just wrong. Emma's breath came short and ragged. The nurses rushed in. Orders fired. Someone shouted for a doctor. "Are you family?" one of them asked me without looking up. "Yes," I said automatically. "Spouse?" The word hit like a wave. "Yes." They shoved a clipboard into my hands, forms blurring under the fluorescent light. Consent, authorization, signatures I didn't deserve to give. I signed them all. Lily clung to my arm, her small voice breaking. "Is Mom okay?" "She will be." I lied. They worked fast, masks, injections, a language made of urgency. I stood helpless while machines decided whether love was enough. When the beeping steadied again, I exhaled. Emma's eyes fluttered open. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered through the oxygen mask. "I had to." Her hand found mine, weak but deliberate. "Not for me," she said. "For her. Save her." 2 words, small and infinite. Save her. Not through money or titles, not through the easy kind of charity I'd always used to feel noble. She meant the harder kind. The nights when Lily would ask why. The years when truth would feel like betrayal. "I will," I said. She tried to smile. "Promise less," she whispered. "Do more." Her eyes closed, exhaustion winning over pain. I sat beside her bed, Lily curled in my lap, both of us listening to the steady hum of the machines. In the hallway, a vending machine buzzed. Somewhere down the corridor, A TV muttered the evening news. My phone kept lighting up with missed calls, my company, my empire, but I didn't touch it. On the chart above her bed, my name was written neatly beside hers. Asterisk Mr. and Mrs. Voss. Asterisk it wasn't true, but for once, I wished it were. Outside, rain streaked the windows, and I thought of the bell at the bookstore, the sound that had started all of this, still ringing somewhere in the back of my mind. Save her. That was the promise. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant. Not rescue. Not redemption. Just the quiet, brutal work of staying. Hospitals teach you how to fake everything: optimism, patience, even sleep. You learn to nod at the word recovery like it still means something. I'd built a career on pretending, so I adjusted quickly. Emma woke 2 days after the emergency. Her face was pale, but her eyes were clear. When she saw me sitting there with Lily asleep across my lap, her voice came out thin. "You shouldn't be here. I signed the papers," I said. "That makes me responsible. That makes you reckless." She turned away, but I saw her shoulders tremble. She wasn't angry that I'd stayed. She was angry that part of her wanted me to. Weeks passed like that. Mornings started with coffee I didn't drink. Nights ended with stories I never finished. The nurses began greeting me by name. I learned the rhythm of the ward, which beeps meant hope, which silences didn't. I learned Lily's habits too, the way she whispered to her rabbit when she was scared, the way she checked her mother's breathing before she slept. My other life, the one made of glass and headlines, began to crumble. My assistant left 12 messages. The board scheduled a vote to replace me as CEO, citing prolonged absence and instability. The stock dipped. Rumors multiplied. Asterisk billionaire vanishes after secret breakdown. Asterisk none of them guessed the truth, that I was sitting in a folding chair, reading Charlotte's Web to a little girl who shared my eyes. Emma tried to push me away with politeness. "You have a company to run," she said one morning. "I have people who can run it." She studied me, her tone sharp but quiet. "And who runs you?" I didn't answer. Lily broke the tension. "We're reading faster, Mom. Daniel says we'll finish the big book soon." Emma smiled faintly, then looked down. She understood too well. Affection spreads faster than disease. It all broke the day the journalist showed up. She caught me in the lobby, recorder in hand, her smile professional and predatory. "Mr. Voss, is it true you've been visiting the oncology ward daily? People are saying there's someone special." I said nothing, but she already had the photo, me holding Lily's hand outside the playroom. By evening, it was everywhere. Asterisk billionaire's secret family? Mystery child at St. Mary's. Asterisk. The next morning, Emma refused to see me. When I walked into her room, she was packing the few things that fit into a canvas bag: books, scarves, drawings. "We're being moved to the charity wing," she said flatly. "You don't need to come." "Moved? That's insane. I'll fix it." "You already can't." She turned to face me, her voice low and shaking with fury. "They think I'm your mistress, Daniel. They think you bought a dying woman, a child, and a story. You've given them gossip instead of dignity. I never meant. No one ever does." She gripped the four-pole for balance. "You don't get to rewrite me with your guilt." Lily stood between us, rabbit clutched to her chest. "Why are you fighting? You sound like the people on TV." Emma knelt immediately. "We're not fighting, sweetheart." Lily turned to me. "Are you mad too?" I crouched so we were eye level. "No. Just scared." "Of what?" "That I'll lose both of you." The words fell heavy in the space between us. Emma's expression softened for a heartbeat. "Then stop making it harder," she whispered. But the damage was already done. That night, Lily disappeared. Her shoes were missing, her rabbit gone. Panic moved faster than protocol. A security guard mentioned seeing a small figure heading toward the lobby. I didn't need directions. I knew exactly where she'd gone. The bookstore smelled the same: dust, paper, cinnamon. She sat in the corner, knees tucked under her, reading asterisk Goodnight Moon. Asterisk her voice trembled, but she didn't cry. When she saw me, she said quietly, "You said stories end happy. That means no one dies before the last page." I knelt beside her, rain dripping from my coat. "Sometimes stories end sad," I said, "but they can still be true." She thought about that. "Then I want ours to end true. Mom says truth makes people brave." "She's right," I said softly. "Your mom's the bravest person I know." She nodded and climbed into my arms, like she'd been waiting for me. I carried her through the rain, her head on my shoulder, the rabbit pressed between us. When we reached the hospital, Emma was waiting by the window, pale and trembling. She didn't scold, just pressed her forehead to Lily's and whispered, "You scared me." I was finding the ending. Lily murmured. Emma looked at me over her daughter's head. "Did you?" "No," I said, but I found the truth instead. Her gaze held mine. There was no forgiveness in it, just exhaustion and something close to mercy. "Then hold on to it," she whispered, "before the lies finish you." I wanted to promise I would, but the word promise had started to sound like the language of ghosts. Winter crept in quietly, coating the city in frost and the hospital in silence. Even the nurses spoke softer, as if sound itself could bruise her. By December, Emma's charts were longer, her options shorter. She smiled often for Lily's sake, but her eyes gave her away. The strength that once frightened me had thinned to something transparent, fragile but still burning. She saved her anger for me. "Stop looking at me like that," she said one night while I unwrapped the soup she wouldn't eat. "Like what?" "Like you're calculating how much time I have left and wondering if there's a way to double it." I almost smiled. "Maybe I am." "Then stop. You can't build your way out of goodbye." She was right, but I didn't know how to stop building. Creation was the only language I'd ever spoken. Lily didn't understand what was happening, not entirely, but she felt the weight of it. She started leaving drawings everywhere, bright suns with long arms, stick figures with huge hearts. She left one on my chair every morning, as if love itself could hold the walls together. One morning, Emma found a new drawing on her tray. 3 people holding hands beneath a yellow sun. Underneath, written in her uneven letters, "Our family." Emma stared at it for a long time. "She's rewriting her world," she said softly. "She's not wrong," I replied. "Not yet," she whispered. When the latest round of treatment failed, she asked to go home, not my apartment, not some polished clinic. Just home. A rented flat with peeling wallpaper, and a window that looked out on nothing. I wanted to argue, but she smiled and said, "Let me lead the way I lived, quietly." So I took her and Lily there myself. No chauffeur, no entourage. Just us and the sound of the city pretending not to notice. That night, she asked me to stay. "For Lily," she said. But when Lily fell asleep, Emma reached for my hand. Her skin was cold, thin as paper. "I need you to do something for me. Anything." She laughed faintly. "You should stop saying that. You mean it, and that's what makes it dangerous." She pointed toward a small video camera on the dresser. "Record me. Now? Now. Before I lose my courage." I set it up. The red light blinked like a heartbeat. She adjusted her scarf, smiled softly, and began. "Hi, my love. If you're watching this, it means you're older, maybe brave enough to ask questions I couldn't answer. I hope you still like stories. I hope you read fast." Her voice trembled but didn't stop. "You're the best thing I ever made. The kindest. The world can be cruel, but sometimes it sends someone who helps carry the weight. Daniel did that for me. He broke my heart once, but he gave it back better." She turned to me, eyes wet. "Stop recording." When I did, she whispered, You'll show her when she's ready. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. You won't be, she said softly. Do it anyway. The next morning, she wanted to see my apartment. Just once, she said, before it's over. So I brought them there. The place smelled like expensive leather and emptiness. Lily ran through the room shouting, "It's like a castle." Emma smiled faintly. Castles are for lonely people, sweetheart. Lily spun in the marble foyer until she got dizzy. I caught her before she fell. Emma watched us with a look that was love, envy, and peace all at once. We stayed the night. I cooked badly, she laughed softly, and for a few hours we pretended the world was kind. Lily fell asleep between us, her head on Emma's arm, her hand on mine. Promise me something, Emma whispered. Another one? Her smile was tired but real. When I'm gone, don't tell her right away. Let her grow first. Let her believe in simple things a little longer. I wanted to argue, but her certainty silenced me. Promise, she said again. I promise. She closed her eyes. Good. Then this night can stay perfect. In the morning, the light was gray and still. Lily slept peacefully between us, one small hand resting on Emma's. But Emma wasn't breathing. I sat there for a long time, unable to move. When I finally stood, I pulled the blanket up over her shoulders. Lily stirred. Mom? My voice broke. She's sleeping, I said. The light came easily, soft as mercy. I carried her to the window so she wouldn't see. Outside, the world kept moving. Cars, clouds, everything ordinary. She'll wake up soon, right? Not soon, I whispered. But she's safe now. Lily nodded like she understood. Then we'll finish her story for her. And I knew Emma had been right all along. You can't build your way out of goodbye. You can only learn to live inside it. Grief never disappears. It only changes shape. Mine put the suit back on and called itself purpose. 6 months after Emma's funeral, I stood in a boardroom full of voices arguing over profit margins, and realized I couldn't remember what we were selling. I left before the vote ended. No one followed. Power rarely notices when someone quietly walks away. The first thing I sold was my penthouse. The second was the silence that came with it. Every dollar went to St. Mary's. This time, not for oncology or equipment. For stories. A children's reading room painted warm yellow, filled with beanbags instead of beds. I named it the Emma Voss Library, though she would have rolled her eyes at that. The press called it redemption. It wasn't. It was survival. Lily lived with Emma's sister, Claire, a woman who shared her eyes but not her softness. She tolerated me the way people tolerate background noise. She's adjusting, Claire told me once. But don't confuse her. She needs normal. Normal. As if that word still existed. I visited when I could. Left envelopes under the door. Tuition, insurance, grocery money. Guilt had turned into currency, and I knew no other way to give. Weeks blurred into months. I wrote letters I never sent. Asterisk, you look like her when you laugh. Asterisk. Asterisk, I kept the rabbits safe. Asterisk. Asterisk, your mother wanted me to wait before telling you. I'm still waiting. Asterisk. Eventually I bought the bookstore. The same one where everything began. The old owner didn't recognize me. I didn't correct him. I kept the bell above the door, the smell of cinnamon, the soft yellow light that made it feel safe. Every Saturday, I opened early. Some mornings no one came. Some mornings, a dozen children filled the aisles, chasing stories through the quiet. The sound of turning pages was the first peace I'd felt in years. And then one afternoon, a laugh split the air, bright, certain, achingly familiar. I turned, and there she was. Lily stood in the doorway, taller now, her hair longer, her face carrying echoes of Emma and something entirely her own. She held a worn copy of Goodnight Moon pressed against her chest. I heard you own this place, she said. My teacher brought our class. I smiled, or tried to. I keep it open for readers who finish fast. She grinned. Mom said you always had a line for everything. Hearing her say Mom felt like a punch I didn't try to dodge. She said that? She said you listen better than most people. She walked deeper into the shop, her fingers trailing along the spines of books. It smells the same. Like cinnamon and stories. Do you still read fast? I asked. Faster, she said, holding up the book. Want to see? We sat on the same worn carpet as years ago. Her voice was steady now, every word upright and certain. When she closed the book, she smiled proudly. I practiced. I can tell. She reached into her pocket and unfolded a photograph. It was creased and faded, the one Emma had kept by her bed. The three of us in the hospital playroom, blurred and laughing. Claire said you shouldn't come, she said carefully. But I wanted to see where you were. I wanted to know if you still remembered. Every day, I said. She studied me, her expression somewhere between child and judge. You loved her, didn't you? Always. She nodded, her voice small. I think she wanted you to love me too. Something in me cracked open, not loudly, just enough to let light through. I do, I said. More than I ever learned how to say. She smiled, a quiet, certain thing. Then maybe that's enough. Outside, rain began to fall, soft and steady. She helped me close the shop early. We stood by the window, watching the street blur into silver. When she turned to leave, the bell above the door gave a gentle ring, the same sound that had followed me through years of loss. She looked back once. You should come to my school next week, she said. We're reading * Charlotte's Web. *, I think you'd like it. And then she was gone, leaving the door open behind her, the bell still trembling in the air. I stood there for a long time, surrounded by rain and paper and memory. For once, the silence didn't hurt. I whispered to the empty shop, "Good night, Moon." This time, it didn't sound like goodbye. Thanks for being here. Every story deserves someone who listens. Subscribe, because the next confession might change the way you see everything.